It's pretty dark and gloomy. It's raining right now. I don't know if you guys can hear it. Sorry if the lighting is a bit dark in here right now. I have been reading 2 books recently. The first one is Eileen by Ottesa Moshfegh. This is a contemporary literary fiction, but it's set in 1964 and also during the winter Christmas season time. The main character, Eileen, she feels kind of trapped in her life. Her father has a drinking problem and she's also working as a secretary at this correctional facility for teenage boys. She does have some mental struggles, I would say. She has been crossing some lines, but nothing super serious yet. I mean, it's still criminal, but it's like petty things like stealing or like shoplifting or like stalking this one officer that she has a crush on. And where I'm at the story right now, it hasn't reached this point, but I know from the summary that there's gonna be a new counselor that arrives to work at the boys' prison, and Eileen is going to form some kind of friendship with this counselor. And then there's also gonna be some like twists with a crime that Eileen gets pulled into. I enjoy Otesa's writing. I think it's a bit witty and has like some dark humor. For a literary fiction book, I find her writing pretty easy to read compared to other literary fiction books. Also, we have like a prologue and then the chapter starts with like the days. So we have Friday and then Saturday, and then today, Sunday, I read the Sunday chapter. So tomorrow I'm gonna continue with the Monday chapter. And then the other book that I'm also reading, I'm about 147 pages into it already. I stopped at Act 2. This is The Art or Prophecy by Wesley Chu. This is an Asian-inspired high fantasy. There is this sort of chosen one trope, so there is a prophecy. However, it looks like the prophecy is wrong. The prophesied hero actually grew up very spoiled and privileged, so he is definitely starting to learn some humility. And then the other 2 characters, one of them is this older woman who is a grandmaster of martial arts. In the first act, she interacts with the prophesied hero and kind of takes him under her wing. And then the other main character is a warrior from the opposing side of the kingdom, which is the supposed villain's kingdom. So at this point, I'm feeling a bit like there is a kind of a gray line between who's evil and who's good. I guess it depends on which side you're on. Yeah, so far I'm really enjoying this. I really like reading about the prophesied hero's arc. I'm excited to see his character development. I'm probably gonna spend the rest of today just reading The Art of Prophecy. Also, as I mentioned, the weather right now is just so good for an afternoon nap. So hopefully I get a few chapters in before I fall asleep. I think I'm gonna pour some hot tea while I read this so that I can keep myself from falling asleep. Yesterday I read The Art of Prophecy up to page 244. I'm gonna read more of this tonight when I get back from work. For this morning, I'm gonna try to read more of Eileen. As I mentioned, the chapter titles are the day, so I'm gonna read Monday today. I'm gonna try to read a bit before work and maybe bring this with me to work as well. If I don't get time to read it this morning, I'll finish the chapter tonight when I get back from work. Hi guys, it's been a couple of days now and I have finished reading both of these books. Let's talk about Eileen first. This book is interesting but also kind of disturbing. We spend a lot of time in Eileen's head, and it does feel like sometimes her thoughts are familiar, but then at times she goes kind of extreme and overboard. She definitely crossed some moral lines, so it's a little bit disturbing. Also, I don't know if there's a trigger warning because there's definitely some uncomfortable, disturbing things that is discussed about in this book. Also, the storyline, if I can compare it to a graph, it's just a straight line except for the end. So the story is very like monotonous, nothing really happens until the last chapter. Overall, this is a little bit outside of my comfort zone, but I'm glad that I was able to read something different from my normal fantasy reads. I do find her writing very easy to read. Even though nothing happens in the story, you can't stop but want to keep reading. So yeah, I'm definitely gonna pick up more books by this author. Moving on, let's talk about The Art of Prophecy. I just finished this last night actually. I really enjoyed the character growth, and there is also found family in this book. The magic system, you can't really narrow it down. It's pretty much martial arts, but then everybody learns like different styles of martial arts. We follow different subplot lines throughout the story and then they converge together at the end. I cannot wait for the second book. I already ordered it, so I'm just waiting for it to come in. I'm very invested in the lives of these characters now and just excited to continue this journey. So I have Mate by Ailey Hazelwood borrowed from the library, and I was gonna start reading this today, but I was looking at my bookshelves and I was suddenly in the mood to read Katabasis by Kuang. So I've actually read like one chapter this morning, and so far chapter 1 I am enjoying the story. I actually have not read anything by Kuang yet, so this is my first book by this author. I've heard some mixed reviews about this book, but I'm gonna keep an open mind and try to form my own opinion about this book. So Katabasis is about two students of Cambridge who decides to go into hell to get their professor because their professor passed away from some accident in the lab. So they're trying to reach him to get a recommendation letter because the professor is one of like the best magicians in the world. So getting his recommendation letter will kind of ensure their future as a magician. So I'm gonna spend most of today diving into this book, and if I have time, I'm also gonna try and read Mate by Ellie Hazelwood. Also, my brother just bought me this BOOX, so box. So I might alternate to read Mate on this device and also on my Kobo. So those are my next reading plans for today and for the rest of the week, and then I'll come back to give you guys an update on my reading progress. Hey guys, so it's been about a week now since my last reading update. I have now made it to page 178 in Katabasis. I remember watching some reviews on this book from people who read the arc, and one thing that they mention is that the author kind of over explains herself. Like, she doesn't trust the readers to understand like the basics. I mean, the author does explain some concepts and some principles, but I felt that it was interesting to read. Maybe I didn't know those basics, so it was interesting for me to learn and read about them. And the story does, like, I wouldn't actually say there's a dual timeline, but like in the present, they're, going in hell and trying to find their professor. But we do get some like background stories of the characters, like a bit of like their past kind of sprinkled in throughout the story. And I kind of like the flow of the writing and how the story is like structured this way. And I don't know if it's a spoiler because it doesn't really say this in the summary of the book, but as I mentioned, I did watch some reviews on this book, and they did mention like how hell is like structured, but I don't want to spoil, so I'm just gonna give you a hint that let's just say it's based on like the 7 deadly sins. Yeah, so far I'm enjoying this book. I'm actually liking it a lot more than I expected, because when I was watching people's reviews, there was kind of like a mixed reaction towards this book, but it's working for me, so I'm really happy. I guess reading is just subjective, so I really think like if you're in a mood to read a book and the summary sounds interesting to you, even if there's like mixed reviews, you should pick it up and check it out for yourself and form your own opinion on the book. And then where I stopped reading, I'm sure other people do the same thing as I did. So I was reading a little bit last night, and then as it was getting late, I was checking like how long the next chapter is before I decide if I want to keep reading or stop for the night. And as I was like looking at the next chapters, it was a pretty long chapter, and I keep seeing this thing like, Alice, what did you do? So now I'm super curious and I cannot wait to dive in and find out what Alice did. Like, what did she do? Alice, what did you do? So I'm gonna keep reading and find out what Alice did. Hi guys, it's the next morning now, and I have read up to page 360, and I didn't stop at the end of a chapter. I just stopped at like the paragraph break because every chapter is like ending on a not exactly a cliffhanger, but there's like a secret revealed or a confession at the end of every chapter, which makes me want to keep reading, keep continue, and so I had to stop at a paragraph break so that I could put down the book and go to sleep. Let's talk about the characters. I feel like I keep flip-flopping between Alice and Peter. Like sometimes I like Alice and I dislike Peter, and later on I like Peter and I dislike Alice. And I think it's because both characters are flawed, which is a good thing because that means they're more human. And I do want to say, like, I don't want to spoil the story, but I feel like I have to mention that if you struggle with some mental health issues, you want to be careful going into this book because there might be some things that could trigger you. So just be aware of that. So yeah, I'm really enjoying reading this book. I'm surprised by how invested I am in the story. I think it's possible that I might finish reading this today. We'll see. So I'm gonna keep reading and I'll come back with my last check-in when I finish this book. I have finished reading Katabasis. I know the Christmas decorations are still up. I need to take that down because it's middle of January now, but I'm too lazy to do it right now. Anyway, back to Katabasis. I finished that book like maybe already a week ago, and from what I remember, the last like 200 pages, I actually really struggled to finish the book. I felt that the story was dragging a lot towards the end. I don't know what happened, but it felt like the story kind of took a different turn, and we were like kind of stuck on one part in the story. The pacing slowed down so much that I was starting to get bored. I felt like the first half was so much more witty and interesting to read, and then the second part took such a different turn that it kind of took me out of the story a little bit. I don't know if this is the right word, but it felt like that second half of the story where we were stuck on a spot, it felt like it turned a little bit philosophical, and I didn't really quite enjoy that part. And I did mention earlier how the author like puts out these like facts and concepts and principles, and they were interesting for me to read, but I think other reviews mention how those facts don't really connect to the story. They were kind of like random, and you know what, that is kind of a valid point. I think I didn't really pay attention or wasn't really critical about that part, so I didn't really notice it. So overall, I really enjoyed the first part of the story, and second part I didn't really quite enjoy, but it does make me interested to read more by Kuang. So I do have Babel by her on my shelf. I think I'm gonna try to pick up that book sometime soon. And I'm going to end this reading vlog here. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for clicking on this video, and I will see you guys next time.